Cardio burns fat, right? No. Cardio actually burns calories, usually in the form of carbs in the bloodstream that are then replaced with the very next meal that you eat.
As it might appear right now. There's an inevitability to the pace here.
Quite similar to what happened in Michigan.
Yeah, and you look at Michigan, even Wisconsin less so, but Michigan is very similar to Pennsylvania, right, where you have the mail vote count at last, and every time you look at Michigan, the margin grows a bit. So it's going to be, you know, you wouldn't quite call it comfortable, but comfortable enough that there wouldn't be any dispute over, for example, ballots that came in after Election Day. Biden does not need those ballots, in my view, to have a comfortable-ish lead, let's call it, in Pennsylvania.
We saw the White House disputing other networks saying that Joe Biden has won the state of Arizona, even though it's tightening there. You say it's not tightening enough?
Yeah, and again, I have been optimistic for President Trump's case in Arizona until this last batch of ballots in Maricopa County, where he was only up 5 or 6 points. He has to be up 20. Now there are far fewer ballots left. So, I mean, it's not impossible to imagine. Arizona's been, frankly, less transparent about which votes are which as compared to, like, Georgia, which has been wonderfully transparent. But that batch was quite poor for President Trump.
We're not ready to project Nevada, but you think it's done for Joe Biden?
Yeah, in fact, since we were last doing this roundup, the lead for Biden's doubled in Nevada roughly because of more ballots from Clark County. I mean, I think that might wind up being a 3 or 4 point Biden win. There are a lot of blue votes left out there. Nevada is, I mean, even maybe more so than Pennsylvania in some ways, a state that Biden can feel comfortable about.
And then finally, Georgia, looking like a recount.
It's going to be a recount, I would think. There are some overseas and military absentee votes left to count. There are a handful of provisionals. It's not clear which way those will break. But, you know, I mean, there is a recount threshold at 0.5 points for a reason. You want to check things twice and 3 times over. But, like, I think we're not going to have more than the 0.5 points there for Biden. But I think he is the favorite to ultimately prevail there as well.
Nate, reflect now on your final projection. I think was it 89-10 or 90-10 that Joe Biden would win.
Yeah.
And you never really wavered in that projection, but the map does look quite different now than it looked, say, 11:30 on Tuesday night.
Yeah, I think people are not used to these red shifts and blue shifts. I mean, it's going to be a feature of elections going forward where if you have one party voting mostly by mail and one party votes mostly in person, and different states count these in different orders, it's going to be very confusing. We have to kind of think, learn the lesson better next time, that you can't really come to many conclusions until maybe Thursday or Friday. There was a point in time which looked like Biden might win Ohio and Texas. He did not, right? He did not lose, though, Wisconsin and Pennsylvania, where he was trailing. So just kind of hold your horses sources, I think, is the key before you judge polls, forecasts, and write too much of a narrative.
Right. We really can't underestimate that. I want to bring Rick Klein in on this question. It was our pollster Gary Langer who said this is basically it's going to be like Netflix. That we're now going to be voting in entirely new ways. It was accelerated by the pandemic. It's going to change the way elections are run. We're going to have to get used to the idea that elections are going to take place over weeks and months, not one day. It's going to change campaigns. It's going to change the way people think about it.
This is just the fact of voting in America. It's changed. The concept of Election Day is antiquated. It made sense in a previous generation. It no longer makes sense to think about this as a single day of voting. I mean, just think about what we've seen over the last couple of days. If the initial returns had reflected what we're seeing happen with these early votes, we would have had a much different election night and a different experience as a country over the last couple of days. And as much as we can say we counsel patience, people haven't fully adjusted to that reality, in part because of COVID and in part because states have been moving in this direction for a long time. People are voting and living their lives in much different ways. And I think our expectations have to adjust. And the parties have to adjust. It's not going to be realistic for Republicans to say that vote by mail is not a good way to vote. The fact is it's a way that you can bank votes. It's definitely something that smart campaigns are going to have to use.
Matthew, Dad, you've run campaigns. You've been part of high levels of campaigns. How are they going to change?
Well, one of the things I think we have to acknowledge is this is not a temporary change because of COVID. I'd give you an experience in Texas where we've had early voting, which went on for 2 weeks before Election Day. Once that started, a small amount of people started doing it. Once people got in the habit, now the majority of people in Texas do it, and it's just become part of their lives. That's what's going to happen here. And so this is going to fundamentally, for many people around the country, like, when do you hold debates? I think it's no longer advisable to hold a debate a week out or 10 days out when half the country's already voted. So you're going to have to move up debates. Campaigns are going to have to move up their messaging. Campaigns are going to have to move up when they do interviews or important interviews. Campaigns are going to have to move up GOTV operations.
Hey, look, it's your heater and air conditioner. This power couple has been with you through a lot.
We're not even really officially through this, and I think, you know, having one of the people who was in the 16 primary against President Trump, we were talking about this just the other night. All of us, I was talking to two of the other candidates, and we were saying we never thought he was really going to stay in the race. We never really thought.
And you were waiting for the other one to take him out.
Well, yeah, everybody was waiting for that moment, and you know, his appeal, I think, is uniquely personal. And, you know, remember, he's the first candidate in my lifetime who's come into a race with nearly 100% name ID, from having been on primetime television for 10 years in the top-rated show, who had books and all the rest of it beforehand, did not travel the traditional political road. And so it made it very, very difficult for all of us who were in the traditional political lane to do that. Now his supporters need to look for someone, I don't think the same type of person, but someone who's talking about some of the same things.
Well, let me press that, because I think that is an interesting point. You see a lot of people wondering, some worrying, is this going to mean that other candidates who want to emulate Trump, see the kind of success he had with his base, can get away with the kind of personal behavior we saw, the false statements and everything like that? I tend to agree with you that it seems difficult that someone's going to be able to emulate that.
They have to be. Listen, he is a unique figure in media. He's a unique figure in American politics, and now I think a unique figure in American history if he's not reelected. And so I think the biggest mistake I've seen over the years, being almost as old as Rahm now, is that candidates make the same mistake over and over again. They run the last campaign in the next campaign. They think that what happened 4 years ago is applicable this time. It was one of the things I said to the president 131 days before the election. I said, you're running the 16 campaign in 20. The country is different in 20 and won't respond as well as you think it will to a 16 campaign. And if he does lose, I think that's going to be one of the biggest reasons that he does. So we're sitting here right now in 2020. We can't see the future yet. But one thing I know for sure, the campaign that wins this time will not be the campaign that wins the next time in terms of approach. It has to be different and wind up listening to the country and responding to what the country wants.
Never is. Great point. Heidi Heitkamp?
I think one thing that we're missing here is the money. I once said 80% of all campaign finance that you spend is wasted. My pollster agreed with me. He said, that's right. You just don't know which 20% you should be spending. I think we know a little bit better now. And this idea that money is going to win an election, I mean, you saw it over and over again in these Senate races. Money does not win elections. Organizing wins elections, to Yvette's point. And you've got to start really understanding big data, because I can drop a pin in North Dakota and talk to every nursing home worker right now and get a direct message to them. And so these campaigns are going to get more sophisticated, and money is going to be less and less of a factor, and communication and the right, as Trump proved, the right product to sell is absolutely essential.
Heidi Heitkamp, thanks. Let's go back to the field now, check in, because the vote still is being counted in these key states. I want to start in the state of Pennsylvania. Eva Pilgrim, want to give us an update on where things stand right now, what we can expect over the course of the day?
Well, right now, looking at the numbers, Joe Biden is leading by a slim margin here in Pennsylvania, about 9,000 votes. There's still about 120,000 of those outstanding ballots that need to be counted. And we are expecting, the state has given us the idea that those will mostly be counted today. Here in Pennsylvania, George, I just kind of want to go back to some of that information that has been swirling out there about whether or not those ballots that arrived after Election Day are being counted. Right, those ballots are in question. They were postmarked. They have until Friday to arrive. The state has told us earlier this week that those ballots were to be segregated. We actually went ahead and called today in the 3 largest counties in Pennsylvania, Philadelphia, Allegheny, and Montgomery. All 3 of those counties confirmed to us that they have, in fact, segregated those ballots, and they have not been counted yet. They will not start counting those ballots until later today if the court tells them that that is something that they should do. And I just also want to reiterate the fact that that decision and that running of this election process is being done by a bipartisan group here in Philadelphia. The commissioner that actually confirmed for us that those ballots were segregated was Al Schmidt. He's a Republican here. And that group that is counting the ballots, they are Republican and Democrat. So it's a mixture of people in the room. It's an important distinction that I think the American public needs to understand as they see this vote total come in. This total does not include those ballots that are in question, George.
Eva Pilgrim, thanks. Let's go to Nevada. Matt Gutman, Joe Biden's lead has expanded in the last hour by a significant amount.
A significant amount indeed. I mean, when we spoke yesterday at about this time, it was only 7,000. It trickled up to about 11,000 late yesterday. And right now it's at 22,000 votes, which is not an enormous number of votes in the scheme of the country. But here in Nevada, it's basically 2% of the electorate. He is not far away from that threshold that Hillary Clinton got in 2016, 2.5%. So it's getting significant, and even more so, the ballots that are left to be counted, about 84,000 of them just here in Clark County. Again, this is a Democratic stronghold. 70% of the entire population of Nevada is in this county, which houses Las Vegas. And the Biden campaign feels so good about this now, as opposed to just a few hours ago when they were kind of hedging. They're feeling so good about it now. They now tell me they're just waiting for the AP or Fox or somebody to call the race here. Now, COVID has been a major issue here in Las Vegas. It has really hit this industry, which is the tourism industry in Las Vegas, extraordinarily hard. The unemployment rate is at near 15%. I just want to go back one more note about the elections here. It has been really slow, and the reason for that is, for the first time in state history, a mail-in ballot has been sent to every single active voter in the state, and it is taking more time. But I don't know if you guys have seen it in New York, but it's generating a lot of pretty funny memes about how slow the state has been. But again, the state is telling us, and chiefly the registrar here in Clark County, they don't care about speed right now. They just want to be thorough, make sure that every legal vote counts, and they're doing their job. George.
I was going to say slow is okay as long as it's right. But Matt, one other point I want to ask you about. It seemed like you're in the midst of some commotion last night at the polling places where these protesters come out. It really calmed down today?
I think it's calmed down significantly. And even yesterday, George, the commotion was sort of a spouting of anger, of frustration. It wasn't about trying to turn the election anyway. And I sensed a bit of resignation among the crowd there. People understood that this is pretty much over in Nevada, that because there are so many votes left to be counted here in Clark County, which is typically very blue, they're not going to win. But they wanted their voices heard. But again, and I think it's because the president has been sowing a lot of these falsehoods. There is a significant amount of concern about fraud. And again, there is zero evidence that there is any systemic fraud going on in the system. Each individual ballot that is questionable is being examined. There have been a lot of curing of ballots, was making sure that the signatures of voters match. But by and large, this has been a fair election here, according to officials. Still, it doesn't dampen that frustration and hasn't shut off the lawsuits that the Trump campaign has filed against the state of Nevada, including its Republican Secretary of State. So I don't know when that's going to abate. I think hopefully if there is some sort of conclusion to this soon, maybe today, maybe in a few hours, that'll help put things to rest here, George.
Thank you, Matt. Let's go to Arizona right next door. Whit Johnson, same question for you. We saw demonstrations Tuesday and Wednesday. What's the mood and tenor there today?
You know, George, it's similar. We have seen that barricaded area outside the county recorder's office that they set up with the fencing and set up what they called a free speech zone to try to make sure that it's safe for protesters to want to go. And it's an interesting dynamic because you have the Trump administration and the president himself telling people to stop the count, and yet protesters here were saying count the ballots. So there is some frustration similar to what Matt Gutman was talking about in Nevada here. But we also just have some interesting developments in terms of the numbers this morning, because we see Joe Biden's lead shrinking, but at the same time, the path to victory for Donald Trump is becoming more difficult. That's because Biden is up by about 43,000 votes right now. There are about 200,000 still outstanding from across the state. So that path is becoming more difficult. Democrats growing increasingly confident. And also, we mentioned the Senate earlier on, and I said, watch Mark Kelly. And sure enough, now we have that projection, Mark Kelly to go to the Senate. The first time Arizona will have 2 Democrats in the Senate in nearly 70 years. And you have to think about the legacy of John McCain in all of this. That was John McCain's seat. John McCain's wife, Cindy, endorsed Joe Biden. There was no love lost between the McCains and the Trumps. And Martha McSally, the Republican in this race, has the unique distinction of being a Senate candidate to lose 2 Senate races within 2 years. Once as a candidate in 2018, it was Kyrsten Sinema who ended up winning and going, but then she was appointed to McCain's Senate seat by the governor after he died. And now it looks as though she's going to lose her second race. And all of this comes down to really a popularity contest, because Mark Kelly, well known, the astronaut, of course, the husband of Gabby Giffords, who was shot and nearly killed back in 2011. And McSally had some issues with her ties to Donald Trump. They had that awkward moment when he came recently for a rally where Trump invited her on stage and kind of told her to hurry up and then shooed her off stage. She also had issues on health care. Mark Kelly really went after her on that she was her votes against pre-existing conditions, but then also claiming that she would keep them. The independent vote and the moderate vote really standing out here in Arizona as well. We've seen some of the exit polls, both Mark Kelly and Joe Biden performing well here. This is a state, George, where 1/3 of the voters are independent, and a state where there are many shifting demographics.
I wonder if something else is going on there as well. We also those in the debates there. Martha McSally put on the spot over her relationship, whether she was proud to be supporting President Trump, and she couldn't answer that. And of course, Arizona, the home of Barry Goldwater, long time a conservative state, but you've got John McCain and Cindy McCain, as you said, pushing back, endorsing Joe Biden.
To intrude upon that. These ballots are legal, they're being counted, they're being tallied, and we will certify a winner that reflects the will of the people.
Jennifer Shapiro, thanks for your time again tonight. We'll be right back.
I know what happened, and I'm not guilty.
Why the fascination with criminal trials? Figure out what's really out there.
She revealed she had murdered his family.
I know in my heart that he did this.
It's the time of suspicion.
The ending's really tough.
You don't know whether truth is going to be difficult to find unless you try to find it.
Oh, look at this clear sky.
Hey, clear sky, guys. Made it through.
Change is difficult, but this is my home. This is where I want to be.
I love that town. I'm not going to bail on it.
It's a big deal. New beginning.
Rebuilding Paradise. Network premieres Sunday at 9 on National Geographic.
Now, when it matters most, the straightforward facts. ABC News is America's #1 news. #1 in the morning, #1 in the evening, and the #1 show on all of television. #1 in late night versus the competition. #1 in politics versus the competition. The #1 daytime talk show. And #1 in streaming news. Most trusted, most watched. ABC News is America's #1 news.
Welcome to Disney Plus. Are you ready? Drop in and explore. The action, the adventure, and the originals. There's no limit to what you'll find. These are your worlds. So come on, dive deeper into the universes you love. Wherever and whenever you want them, you'll find them all here on Disney+.
Susan Powell was a young, beautiful mother. She just one night vanished.
Where is Susan?
July 29th, making sure that if something happens